Welcome to Christian Theological Seminary's lifelong webinar series entitled Navigating a Disorienting Age. For those who may not know, CTS is committed to being an academic community that embodies God's liberative, restorative, and life-affirming message. This year, as we celebrate our 100th anniversary, we are excited to continue this vision with all of you. Today's particular webinar is part of our lifelong learning series called Skills for Flourishing Congregations. Skills for Flourishing Congregations focuses on practical applications for faith communities, providing theological reflections and tools designed to empower and strengthen our community. In today's session, we'll explore the important skill welcoming difference in our communities. That is, navigating strangers or guests during a disorienting age. The values of welcoming, inclusion, and belonging are at the heart of what we do at CTS. And hence, our theme today, Welcoming the Stranger to Your Church, aligns perfectly with these values. Before we begin, let me introduce myself. I'm Francisco Lozada Jr. I'm the Vice President for Faculty Affairs and Dean of the Faculty here at CTS. Much of my work has centered on understanding the reception of otherness from a theological perspective, so I'm especially excited about today's presentation. At this time, allow me to turn it over to my co-host, Dr. Rob Saylor, who will introduce himself.
Hello, friends. It's wonderful to be with you this afternoon. My name is Rob Saylor, and I'm pleased to serve at CTS in several roles. I'm Associate Professor of Theology and Culture. I also serve as Associate Dean for Evaluation, and I'm pleased to direct the Lilly Endowment Clergy Renewal Programs. All of those roles have me involved with congregations and those that serve them, so I'm very much looking forward to our presentation today.
Okay. It is now my pleasure to introduce Reverend Hipólito Fernández Reina. I've had the honor of hearing him preach on hospitality several times. And he has profoundly deepened my understanding of how true hospitality transforms both guests and hosts. Reverend Hipólito Fernández Reina was born and raised in the beautiful island of the Dominican Republic. Before entering theological studies, he studied architecture at the Mother and Teacher Pontifical Catholic University in the Dominican Republic. He graduated from the Center of Theological Studies, the Episcopal Seminary in the Dominican Republic, in 2004, and was ordained to the priesthood on February 12, 2006. After 9 years of dedicated ministry in his homeland, he and his family accepted a call to St. Monica's Episcopal Church in Naples, Florida, where he became their associate rector, establishing the first Latino congregation in the Naples Deanery. In November 2017, he took on the role of priest in charge at St. Giles Episcopal Church in Pinellas Park, Florida, where he was the only Episcopal priest in Southwest Florida, leading both Anglo and Latino communities simultaneously. He also served as the leader of the Diocesan Hispanic Latino Committee for nearly 3 years. Reverend Fernández Reina, who has experienced hospitality as both a stranger journeying to the country, to the U.S., and has also offered hospitality to those in search of welcome, is the perfect person to speak on this topic today. Please join me in welcoming Reverend Fernández Reina. The stage is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Francisco, and I want to say that apparently you really know a lot about me. Thank you. Yeah, I want to thank Dr. Francisco Lozada and for inviting me, and especially to everyone at CTS to make these conversations possible. And I'm very excited to share about how we can open doors to so many people who we see as strangers, but who deep down share many situations with us. And I hope that by the end of this time, we can better understand how our welcome can be instrumental in building a vibrant community of faith, attuned to the needs of our context. So I want to start by sharing a personal story with you all. In 2015, after almost 10 years of ministry in the Episcopal Church in the Dominican Republic, the land where I was born, I was called to serve as an associate rector at St. Monica's Episcopal Church in Naples, Florida. And Dr. Lozada already shared some of this. And as always, my wife and 3 children were supporting me and blessing me with their presence. We arrived in the United States on Thursday, April the 2nd, Maundy Thursday, I remember, in the middle of Holy Week with only our suitcases and about $500 in our pockets. And the truth is, it was a long journey as I remember it. I mean, saying goodbye to our relatives on the island, to the people, giving away or selling everything we had, leaving behind our history in the Dominican Church. I think I wasn't very sure what I was doing at that time. So at the airport, someone with a big smile and a sign that said Fernandez family was waiting for us. And that's when I met Mr. Don McCleary. And after getting our luggage, we headed to a very spacious van. And the surprise was that Don didn't come alone. There were Esther Gonzalez, Betsy Smith, and Reverend Catherine Shilref, who hired me. And they all smiled at us. I can remember that. They hugged us. They helped us with our luggage. And they had brought us food. And I don't know if you can relate to this, but it was the first time I had tried one of those giant subs from Publix. And they were really delicious. So they were there at the airport to welcome us. And not only did they take care of having transportation, they also gave us something to eat. Although 3 of them did not speak English, they made sure to have Esther there, who spoke our language. And this detail made us feel particularly included. As time went by, I understood that this story is not exclusive to my family. Through ministry, God has allowed me to learn the processes of other people who at first came as strangers and little by little became part of a spiritual family. And I hope this story gives you an idea about how our time together will be. So let's begin. In this conversation about welcoming the stranger to your church, we are covering 3 key points. First, the biblical foundation of hospitality, analyzing the story of Jesus and Zacchaeus. Second, overcoming barriers to welcoming, identifying common challenges and sharing some strategies. And third, creating a culture of welcome with practical applications on how a consistent welcome and hospitality can help us build community. And of course, we will have space for your questions and comments. So let's ride. The biblical foundation of hospitality. The Holy Scriptures show us that more than receiving people, hospitality is always taking the initiative to extend warmth, welcome, and generosity, especially to those in need or who are different from us. I want to mention a couple of Bible verses that emphasize the importance of welcoming strangers and showing hospitality. And the first verse that I want to mention is in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 2. Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers. For by so doing, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. And this verse highlights the unexpected blessings that can come from showing hospitality to others. And then the second verse that I want to quote here, to mention here, is Romans chapter 12, verse 13. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. And I want to repeat this. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Because here, the concept of hospitality expands and connects with caring for the needs of others. And this thing about expanding concepts is something we will continue to do during our conversation. Now let's talk about one story, the one story in the Bible that to me shows us how Jesus welcomed strangers and the positive impact it had. And hopefully this story is also capable of showing us how we should be welcoming the strangers. So this is about Jesus and Zacchaeus. This is in Luke 19, verses 1 to 10. Luke 19, verses 1 to 10. And the reason I chose this story is because, in my view, it is a bit extreme. I mean, Zacchaeus does not qualify as a stranger technically, in the sense of being an unknown person for his people. I mean, he was Judean, but he was something much more uncomfortable than a Jew. He was a tax collector, a despised profession at the time, basically because he was serving the oppressor, the Romans, the empire. He was serving the oppressor and betraying his own people. So to say that Zacchaeus was an outsider is kind. But even though he was someone who should justly be avoided, Jesus was able to identify a spiritual need in this man, a desire to connect. So instead of ignoring this undesirable character, Jesus created a situation to include Zacchaeus. Jesus invited himself to Zacchaeus' house. And from my perspective, this was pretty risky. Personally, I'm not the kind of person who would invite myself to visit someone, much less to dinner. Not only because I'm an introvert, but because in my cultural context, it is not polite to invite myself to dinner at someone else's house. But in Jesus' context, this was a brilliant and bold move, because Zacchaeus was frowned upon by his own people. So this auto invitation was an act of acceptance that defied the religious status quo and redefined who was worthy in the eyes of God. So this sign of love coming from Jesus had such an impact that it led Zacchaeus to repentance and a change of life. I mean, hear this. This acceptance, this sign that Jesus showed to Zacchaeus led him to repentance and a change of life. He decided to change everything. He even promised to, return money to the people, to some people that he thought that he unjustly took more. So just as Jesus reached out to Zacchaeus, we should actively welcome newcomers to our church. And I guarantee it's going to be risky and sometimes uncomfortable, but it will also be rewarding. It will lead to transformation. It will lead to lives changed. So here is when we begin to talk about overcoming barriers to welcoming. So what is the transformation we are seeking? Do we really want a revolution, a change for good in the lives of those who need change, as Zacchaeus? We have heard so many times that transformation begins within each of us, and that if we do nothing, nothing will happen. But what happens when we try to create the atmosphere for institutions to change? Now, hold up this question, because in some way we will return to it later. I believe every church can be a place where everyone feels accepted and valued, regardless of their background or current situation. And we know this means fostering a culture of inclusivity and grace. But then we have these barriers, these obstacles, common challenges that often prevent our churches from being inclusive. And here are some of these barriers. The elites or groups and insider language, this club mindset, where established groups can unintentionally make newcomers feel excluded. And using terminology or insider words can also be confusing and isolating. Where do we sit when we have our church meetings? We normally go to, our groups, to the people that look alike, and I'm to blame for that. I love to sit near Latinos or near Dominicans when I'm in a meeting. It's easier. Things are easier, but this makes things a little harder for newcomers. We have judgmental attitudes, a sense of judgment, whether real or perceived, about someone's appearance, lifestyle, or past, can be a huge restriction, and people notices the way we look at them. People note these things, so we need to watch our judgmental attitudes. Also, an unfamiliarity with church culture. Because church can be full of unspoken rules and rituals. Newcomers might feel lost or unsure of what to do. And I have experienced this, even if they are coming from the Roman Catholic Church, or they learned from their grandparents or from mom, they were used to go to church at home, but then they come to the States and there's this enculturation, everything changes, the dynamics. So they forget about things, and they forget about church and how we do things. So a lot of rituals, a lot of books, a lot to read, a lot of words. So there's this also this lack of accessibility with physical limitations, such as the lack of wheelchair ramps or accessible restrooms, can create barriers, especially when we have old buildings. We need to watch closely how we are welcome those people with physical limitations. Also, another factor is poor communication, unclear signage, lack of information about programs, and inconsistent follow-up can make people feel unwelcome, and especially if we have people from other countries that not necessarily speak our language, or not necessarily feel comfortable speaking our language in our context. How are we taking that factor, that detail in consideration when we are communicating, when we are using our communications to reach others. And we have also assumptions and stereotypes. These are preconceived notions about people based on their background or appearance can hinder genuine connections, So facing challenges is a normal part of the journey to change. The important question is, what can we do to overcome these obstacles, these barriers to welcoming? What can we do about these obstacles? And here's when I'm sharing some of the things, that we can do. Like, for example, we can have intentional greeting teams. Train volunteers to warmly welcome everyone who enters the church. We need to train our people because our people need to know how to properly welcome visitors. And if we train our people, then they can engage in brief conversations, offer assistance, offer directions. So we need to be very intentional with our greeting teams. And also, we can have diverse small groups by creating opportunities for people to connect in smaller settings or less intimidating settings with others from diverse backgrounds and experiences. I just finished a 4-week series on small groups of discipleship. And one of the things that we did here at Christchurch Cathedral, one of the things was that these were, hear the name, small groups of discipleship. So these groups were meant to be small, not big groups. And also part of the good thing about these groups is that we were here to support each other, and that we brought to the table conversations, sometimes personal things that we of course try to keep within us or between us here. So we respect that, and those are things that happen when we have a diverse small groups. Also, we can have clear communication. I mentioned something similar to this before. We can use clear and concise language in announcements and printed materials, not a lot of words, because our people, from my context, sometimes there are people coming from other countries, from other contexts. They are not used to read a lot of words, and we are very wordy in our leaflets, in our services. We use a lot of words. So a part of offering a welcome to our church is to have brochures with basic information, and also think about technology, because we have younger generations that know how to use technology. So if we can include, just a barcode or something, so they can use their cell phone, and by pointing their camera, they can access more information about our faith communities. There is something that I call a body system, like a companion. We can pair newcomers with existing members who can guide them and answer questions and help them feel connected. But remember, this is all connected, or this is all related to training. We can have accessibility audits. We can regularly check the church physical space and programs to ensure everything is working, that these programs are accessible for people with disabilities, and that's a way to show that we have empathy, that we are mindful. And talking about empathy, I want to mention empathy training. This is very necessary in these times. We can conduct workshops, or even in our sermons and preachings, that focus on developing empathy and understanding towards others. And I want to focus a little bit on this emphasizing empathy training. I have some suggestions that I want to share about this, because there are several initiatives that could be available to enhance empathy in individuals through training. And some of these include the newcomer experience. I mean, can we imagine ourselves visiting the church for the first time? Can we put ourselves in the place of individuals who are entering a new territory, not necessarily a friendly territory, a new territory, or returning after being away for some time? Sadly, there are many people that have been driven away from church in the last decades. So what happens when some of these people, for some reason, they start to, return? They have been away, for they return to church. What would they notice? And what would you notice? How would you feel? I mean, if we put ourselves in their place. We can also share stories, inviting people to share personal stories of times when they felt welcomed or excluded in a church setting. That's very important. We need to create those spaces for the people to express themselves and to share their stories. We also can challenge assumptions. We can have regular conversations where we ask the audience to reflect on any unconscious biases they may have and how those predispositions might affect their interactions with newcomers. And we cannot forget about the power of small gestures, highlighting how a simple smile, a kind word, or an invitation to coffee, lunch, or dinner can make a huge difference. And hear this, an invitation, not another invitation, but an invitation from us to this person, to this individual, to this family, to coffee, lunch, or dinner. And how can that make a huge difference in someone's experience? So that's about emphasizing empathy training. Those were some suggestions. So now we're going to talk about our third key point, creating a welcoming culture. Remember the question I told you to remember? What happens when we create an environment for the institution to change? The first thing is that we get into trouble, that's for sure. And this reminds me of Latino ministries, regardless of denomination. And of course, I was not going to avoid this talk about my identity as Latino. So people often think that all Latinos look alike and speak the same language. And I want to assure you that this is not true. First of all, we don't even speak the same Spanish. And we don't even speak the same language. The terms vary from country to country and within our countries from region to region. It is so easy to say a word that in one place means nothing, and in another is something that you would not say in public. And no, I'm not going to give any real life examples, but I know some. So if you have been thinking about welcoming Latinos to your church, don't be scared, but be prepared. So how could we create a culture of welcoming, which means an adequate atmosphere for people wanting to connect and belong? One of the things that impacts a stranger the most is when you can somehow speak the language while welcoming them, like the people from St. Monica did when I got here with my family. If you want to learn from me, it would be good if you can at least say, hola, or I love you, or te amo, bienvenido. When meeting a new visitor to church, the idea would be to be able to understand and talk with this person, but the reality is that this does not always happen. So what do we do? In our context, should we offer English classes to help people interact better with the church in our context here in America? That could be a good thing, but wouldn't it be better to step out of our comfort zone and create situations where strangers feel included and valued? I think we can expand our concept of language to include other ways of communicating and sharing our stories. And here I'm bringing this expansion about the concept of language, because we have these languages of love. And in my context, I have seen experiences with the power to unite us beyond social cultural barriers when we are intentional and consistent about them. And I am especially referring to music, food, and any initiative that help us build and live faith in community. And you can see that beautiful picture over there, that beautiful poster. I mean, and sorry, Coro Latinoamericano is not paying me extra for promoting them. So I just want to make that clear. But the ministry of our Coro Latinoamericano in Christ Church Cathedral is a way to say we love and respect you. The music we sing connects us to our roots and helps us to remember who we are and where we come from. Through music, we can help people understand that their journey is dignified and valuable. And then comes food. It's been proven that a good meal can be the perfect complement to productive conversation. Remember Jesus and Zacchaeus? When we gather to share God's blessing in food, we are building community, fostering fellowship, and strengthening our relationships with others. And of course, this isn't just about eating at the table, but about trying different flavors. This is about being intentional when we are sitting around different people when sharing a meal. Tell me about it. I mean, I'm an introvert, but I need to do this if I want to make other people welcome, to make them feel welcome and valued. So, faith in community. I mean, I had something about it in the previous slide, but I want to go deep on this. The faith in community. Just 2 days ago at the Cathedral, we launched our stewardship campaign for 2025 with the theme, The Power of Community. And the motivation behind this says that we as a cathedral are united not only by our faith, but also by the powerful bonds of community in a world where isolation and division are often grabbing the headlines. Our church stands as a beacon of hope, reminding us of the strength and hope and joy we find in gathering together to glorify God, serve our neighbors, and transform our city. End of the quote. So to live faith in community, it is necessary to create spaces and opportunities where people can rediscover the best of their humanity. I'm talking about generosity, forgiveness, service, and love. And during this time, we will be meeting in various locations, including some members' homes, to share a time of prayer, reflection, and some dinner. We will also encourage people to continue supporting our outreach efforts to help institutions, individuals, and families in need. And I want to emphasize, that these experiences that I'm sharing do not necessarily work in all contexts, but my hope is that we have identified, or that we are able to identify common points in them that will help us and can help us in this journey of welcoming newcomers. And I'm almost done, but I do not want to go without mentioning some details that we can put into practice when building relationships. We can emphasize the importance of going beyond initial greetings and fostering genuine relationships with newcomers. Remember the training. Always provide your leadership with specific and actionable tips and tools for creating a welcoming culture, such as clear signage, visitor information, and friendly greeters. Don't forget about hospitality. Develop a team and highlight the need for consistent and ongoing hospitality, not just during the initial visit. There is a follow-up that needs to happen. And also, I want to mention this, and I want to give this the importance that it deserves. There's a call to action that we need to take in consideration. A call to action is always good. We need to inspire the congregation to take concrete steps, specific steps to make their churches more welcoming to newcomers. What are we going to do? What are we doing? What do we need to do to keep welcoming newcomers or to make our community more welcoming through fellowship activities, outreach opportunities, etc., etc.? So, this is it, but I would like to end with a prayer before your questions. I would like to just end with a prayer, if you allow me to do so. Heavenly God, as we embark on this journey to build a welcoming church, we humbly seek your divine guidance. Fill our hearts with your love and compassion, that we may create a space where all feel truly welcome and accepted. Guide our hands as we build not just a physical structure, but a spiritual sanctuary. May it be a beacon of hope, radiating your warmth and hospitality to all who enter. Open our minds to creative ways of fostering community, where every person feels seen, heard, and valued. Help us to break down barriers, embrace diversity, and extend your love to those who feel marginalized and forgotten. And grant us the strength to overcome challenges, the wisdom to make sound decisions, and the grace to always put your will first. Guide us to be a testament to your boundless love, communities where lives are transformed and souls are nourished. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Thank you. Thank you very much for a really wonderful and profound presentation. As we move to the Q&A section of our webinar today, I'm going to first give the co-host, Dr. Rob Saylor, the first question, and then we'll open it up to the audience that is present, and then I will conclude with a question myself. So, but Dr. Saylor?
Thank you so much, Reverend Fernandez, for a very stimulating presentation and lots to think about. Throughout your presentation, I found myself wondering about congregations I've been a part of, and specifically something that I often hear in those congregations, which is language of family. Oftentimes congregations will say, oh, we're a family here, we're a church family. And I think oftentimes that language is used to point to several of the good things that you identify when it comes to community, fellowship, food, all of these features. However, I sometimes find myself wondering if that same language of family could perhaps be a barrier. If we think about how visitors might come to a church, maybe people don't want to feel like they're somehow crashing someone else's family reunion, right? So I wonder if you'd reflect a little bit on the tendency of congregations to think about themselves in familial terms. What is positive about that, and what presents barriers when it comes to the sort of welcome that you're describing?
Thank you. What I would say is that this is a process. I mean, we do not necessarily present this language of family, or as I called it in my presentation, this language of love, because I included this aspects like the music, the flavors, I mean, the food, and the way we live faith in community as a family of faith. I mean, I include this in my presentation, and I describe it as languages of love.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not everyone is going to identify with this. This can be a barrier for some people, and especially, I would say, with people that are not used to a family. I mean, I have seen people that have been by themselves their whole life, basically, or they feel that nobody really cared for them. You know, they didn't have a family, so they cannot connect with this kind of approach sometimes. But this is a process. I mean, this is this whole thing about welcoming is a process. So we little by little try to offer the best that we can on each of these aspects. And for example, allow me to answer using talking about my own context. Like on the first Sundays of each month, we have the Fiesta Latina, for example. And what do we do on that Fiesta Latina? Okay, we have the service, and that service we pray, we give thanks, and we present those people who are celebrating birthdays, anniversaries, or any special occasion. And the coro even sings happy birthday for them, you know? I mean, we make them feel special. I mean, we invite them to come. It's not like, I mean, those who don't want to, you know, let others that they are becoming older, I mean, they're not obligated to come, you know, and receive the prayer. But that's something we do during our service. And then after that, we gather in our parish hall to share a meal, you know? And that's when this family talks, this language of love expands, you know? And then we have the opportunity to share things that we cook at home, that we prepared at home, food, you know? And I go from table to table, and I have other people, you know, trying to meet the newcomers and offering them, you know, our welcome. It's not, I'm not very in favor of offering them like a card for them, like on the first Sunday, let us know who you are, etc., etc. You know, it's more like you are here. This is a safe place for you. I mean, and we don't want you to just feel intimidated. Just be who you are. And if you want to leave, you don't want to stay, it's okay. Just come next Sunday. It's going to be better. So I don't know if this answers your question, but, you know.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, for those who are present, feel free to send questions, and you might want to try to keep it, the questions a little short so we can get as many in as possible. But we have a question here. Let me show it to you. And I'll read it for those who might be visually impaired. Can you speak a little bit about the tension between welcoming ministries and evangelism? What do we do when our guests have trauma or expectations of proselytizing or converting? How do we welcome with empathy and hospitality, but still hold a faithful confession of our faith?
Looks like 3 questions in one. Well, let me talk a little bit about this tension that some people experience. You know, I think the first part of this question about the tension between welcoming ministries and evangelism, and what do we do when our guests have trauma or expectations of proselytizing or converting. We just, you know, in my context, we Episcopalians, we're not very on the proselytizing side. I mean, how do you show, what is the best way to show that God loves other people? How would we show other people that God loves them? By loving them. I mean, it's not by telling them God loves you. It's by the things that we can do for them, the hospitality, the welcome, the warm embrace, the hug, the smile. I mean, the availability, that we have for them, that we can show, that we can share. So that's how people start to begin to experience the love of God. And that's not very, well, in a way, this is more proselytizing that just start talking about doctrine. This is about love. So, and then conversion happens, transformation happens, change happens, because we are showing them this empathy. We are giving them space to probably, I don't know, have this re-encounter with God, this to manage their to have some decision on the speed which they want to come to church again, their pace, we're giving them their own space. So it's about the process. So we just need to be patient and keep loving people and keep showing them deeds, acts of love, And so how do we welcome with empathy and hospitality, but still hold a faithful confession of our faith? I mean, those comes together. I mean, there is not a disconnection between a faithful confession and empathy and hospitality. And the example from Jesus and Zacchaeus, I keep mentioning this. I mean, Zacchaeus was an outsider, and more than outsider, somebody that, a despised person, a traitor in his context. But Jesus approached him and included him, and showed him that, your life is not a lost. The hope is not lost. There's something good that can happen to you.
I'm going to show you another question, which is similar to the one you just answered, but I'm going to tag along on this question. So let me read it first, and then let me explain to you what I'm thinking here. With church attendance declining, what are effective ways to engage people outside the church and help them feel comfortable enough and welcome to take their first steps towards attending? Very similar to the earlier one, but you probably get the same question as I do, Reverend Fernandez, is that I sometimes, people ask me, how can we bring more in? And then my question usually follows, why? Why do you want them? Because it's not simply about numbers. It's simply about, there's got to be a posture within the congregation that has an openness to receiving. So hospitality is a two-way street. And so I don't know, can you reflect on this a bit more?
Sure. Thank you. So I remember when I was serving the Dominican Republic, my first parish or my first community was Jesus Nazareno, Jesus the Nazarene, in a town called San Francisco de Macorís. And I remember a missionary group that from the States that went down there to help us in renewing, some things in our building, And one of the things they wanted a new church door, the new main door, for the building. And they changed something. The church opened it from the outside to the inside, open it inside. But they said, no. Let's transform. Let's add another, or let's tweak things. So now the church are going to open to the outside, So sometimes it's not, how are we going to bring people in? It's, what are we doing to go to them? It's about going to them, That's how we welcome people. I mean, we have a lawn here and we do activities outside the church. I mean, we need to have a presence. People need to see, people need to learn, people need to hear about what we are doing and why what we are doing can be relevant for them. I mean, technology, we have a lot of young families. I mean, here in Indianapolis, we have younger generations coming from different countries, and the Latino population growing, and how are we going to reach those families? I mean, they are connected 24/7 to this device. How are we using these devices? How are we using the internet? I mean, the TikTok. I mean, how are we being creative to reach those people, and to how are we helping them to know that we are a place where they can feel welcomed and valued. How are we supporting organizations that not necessarily are religious organizations? How can we support them with volunteers, and how can we meet people there? Because we have this generation that we have our young people, people in their 20s, their 30s. I mean, they love to go and help. They are people that they want to they love to have their hands dirty. They love to get their hands dirty, doing stuff, volunteering. Are we volunteering with them or by their side? Do we find ourselves being by their side, when there are activities or organizations needing from our help? Mm-hmm.
Right. That's let me just piggyback a little bit, and I want to draw back to what you said earlier in the presentation. Mm-hmm. That hospitality, welcoming people, is not simply an act for the guests. It's in many ways it's an act for the host. It's a transformative experience. And that's what I think is powerful behind the story of the Good Samaritan in Luke, for example. Mm-hmm. It's transformative. It changes. The congregation needs to be willing, ready to change its identity, not to have bifurcated services. For example, that might be a place that can be there. It's not an either or, but mm-hmm. It takes a big step to welcome that transformation. So let me go to another question here, and then Rob, I might come back to you. So many who visit a church have already taken a courageous step, because church often has a reputation of being unwelcoming. Do you find that church websites, public appearances by clergy, or service in the wider community have potential to help communicate that a church will be a welcoming space to visit?
100%, of course, 100%. But we need to acknowledge. I mean, we need to learn about our demographics, and we need to acknowledge that our context is becoming more diverse. So when we acknowledge that, then we take in consideration these newcomers, these strangers, these people that are wanting to find a place. They are wanting they need a response. They need an answer. They are fighting in their interior. We are all humans. We have these needs. We have this thirst. So, but we need to acknowledge that their presence. We need to keep opening doors. We need to communicate in more efficient ways. If we have a website and we are wanting to include people from, let's say Brazil. So maybe it could be good to start including some words in Portuguese in our website. I mean, how are those people going to learn, or how are they going to know that we want to welcome them? And that's a way that we can show that we are really wanting to welcome them and embrace them. And I want to say something about embracing. I mean, this is not about losing our culture and our identity, but this is about learning and being open to learn about other cultures. Like, for example, I never heard about Dia de Muertos in the Dominican Republic. That is not a tradition in the Dominican Republic. But since I got here and we have a big Mexican, people, part of our attendance, or the majority of our attendance is from Mexico, and they celebrate Dia de Muertos. So I've learned through them. And I mean, I think about my dad. I lost my dad like 2 years ago, and now it makes like more sense to me, you know. So these are the ways that we can use. And when we go outside, when we show our presence, when we support initiatives that are going to benefit strangers or newcomers, you know, or people in our city, immigrants, that those are ways that speaks like tones, speaks more than words, you know, presence, support.
Let me begin to conclude a little bit. I'm going to give you a testimonial real quick from a student of ours, and then we'll move to Rob for the last question of the day. But I want the audience to see what the student would like to share with everyone. I am proud to be an assistant pastor at First Presbyterian in Bluffton, Indiana. We're offering classes for English acquisition and Spanish. In other words, the members of the FPB want to learn Spanish. We hope to merge both groups on Sundays. Prayers are welcome that this experiment bears amazing fruits of new friendship. And this is a good example, I think, of the transformation element that I'm suggesting earlier, but also confirming what you said. Rob, I'm going to turn to you so you have the last question for the day.
Sure. Reverend Fernandez, you referenced, I believe, your church's mission statement that talked about being a kind of refuge and a witness in these very polarized, divided times. And I don't want to get too political, but I think it's no secret that these are very fraught, intense times in our country and our world when it comes to questions of welcoming the stranger, welcoming the other. My last question to you is, how are you doing as a clergy person when it comes to being in this context, having this mission of welcome in these particularly intense times?
Thank you for that question, because that is something that that's part of my daily bread, I would say, in my ministry. I totally refuse to be labeled. I totally refuse to be limited or put into a square by the language or terminology that is used in this context, you know. And I prefer to tell the people, we are going to rescue the meaning of these terms, of these words. We are going to rescue, and we are going to give these terms the real meaning. When we say we are including the stranger, when we say that we are welcoming everyone, this is not a political statement, and this should not be understood as a political statement. And I don't personally allow anyone to label me as, and let me say this, liberal or conservative, because I use this certain language, no, this is the language of love. This is the language of God. This is the language of Jesus. When I say we are welcoming everyone, when I say that we are inclusive, when I say that we are welcoming the stranger and integrating the stranger to our family and embracing other cultures and diversity, this is not a political statement. I'm talking from my perspective and understanding, taking consideration that I'm from the Caribbean, from the Dominican Republic, and these terms are not something that were present during my growth and development as a ministry leader. And I have seen that sometimes these terms and these concepts can be limitations here in America. And this is not about limitations, but this is about openness.
Yeah, good. You're good.
Thank you.
Reverend Fernandez Reina, we've reached the end. I want to thank you again. I want to remind the audience that our next webinar will be October 30th, entitled Love, Desire, and Identity, Navigating Faith and Sexuality with Dr. Ken Stone. So if you haven't registered, please register. Let's give Reverend Fernandez Reina an applause and whatever meme you would like to use. Thank you for the time. We really appreciate it.